enthusiast since 1998, an entrepreneur, innovator, coach, and a trainer as passion. Dr. Richter is also an enabler of LESS, product owner, scrum master, and an agile coach for individuals, teams, and enterprises in more than 100 endeavors on 3 continents with projects up to 800 people, volumes running up to $2 billion US, and organizations up to 16,000 employees, and he's still agile. So he's now here with us to help us understand alternative billing models. Once again, welcome Dr. Richter.
Well, thank you for the introduction. Thank you. I wanted to start with good morning, but then I realized it's already afternoon. So, well, good afternoon then. First of all, I'd like to ask you a question. Who of you was already involved in some fixed price projects? Okay, almost everybody. Who was involved in some kind of time and material project? Okay. Who was involved in something else? Okay, a few at least. So this is what I will talk about today. What kind of ideas can we create in an agile fashion that we do something else other than time and material, other than fixed price? All this contractual stuff you have to consider when you start working with clients, of course. So I'll skip the first 2 slides because this is just companies we work with and something about myself, which you already heard of. The agenda for today is an overview about contractual stuff, billing models, main criteria, maybe you have heard about the iron triangle and so on, alternative concepts, and then pros and cons. I'm not going to tell you this is the right thing to do today. It's really about creating ideas. Maybe maybe you can create ideas for variations of what you see today. Okay? What are we talking about actually? I will read it for you now. How to find a common payment and billing structure for hours worked and accomplishments in terms of e.g. deliverables, considering contractual, legal, standard-related, and other factors to progress through a common endeavor from an economic standpoint. Does it sound terrible? I think so. Yes. But that's in fact what we are living with, what we are working with. That's our reality. We have to build something, we have to earn money, we have to deliver something. We have some legal stuff to consider. We have some standards out there. We have to follow compliance rules, all these kind of things. And it sounds terrible. And we are agile. We want to be agile. We want to enjoy our work. We want to have fun doing it. But still there are some parts which are maybe not so enjoyable. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how we can make it more enjoyable and more fair probably also. Okay? These are the headlines. I already mentioned fixed price and time and material. This is the standard method of creating a contract about charging, billing. And then there are some other ideas. They are called, for example, provisions and accomplishments. Money for nothing, change for free. And the other one, all or nothing. There are some similar concepts on the internet, but I modified them slightly and gave them a little bit different names because I was not so happy with these concepts I found on the internet. So some of them have obvious flaws and there are obvious bugs. So this is the reason why I did something for myself. The other part of the slide connects to the project management triangle, where you have this wish from clients mostly that the scope is fixed, time is fixed, budget is fixed. That means you have a deadline to deliver. You have a budget where you can where you have a limit for it, and you have a scope which is agreed upon, and it should be delivered as agreed upon. In the agile world, we say follow change, of course. The world around is changing. That means scope. If there's a fixed scope, what does it mean to an agile methodology, to Scrum, for example? And the lower part, this is what I prefer to work with. This is the project management diamond, as it is called. We have an additional factor in here. You see, it's still scope, time, cost, but the quality is not only a result, it's something will have to deliver. What we else have to consider in a project is client expectations. Because you can still deliver on time all the features agreed upon, within budget, with high quality, all the testing. We heard a lot about in various sessions about testing quality. All the tests are running in green, so that 100% covered, everything is perfect, and still the client doesn't like it. So there's not only quantity we want to measure, it's also the quality, the emotional aspect of it. You know, we are all people. We're not defined by figures and numbers only. We have emotions, and client expectations are very often led by emotions. So this is the more quantitative and qualitative aspect we have to connect. This is why I prefer actually working with this project management triangle. They're still a little bit misleading, these concepts, because they're two-dimensional. You know, these representations are two-dimensional. But in fact, we are living in at least 3 dimensions, and more often, let's call it 4 dimensions, if you consider time as the 4th dimension. So these representations are not really good. But still, this one is better than the other one. So, fixed and to distinguish a little bit between fixed price and time and material. You see, fixed price means budget is fixed and risk is mainly on the contracted side. Time and material, invoice based on time and material. That means the more hours you work, the more money you will get. That's the logic behind it. That would mean risk is mainly on the client side. Because if you're slower, you earn more, which is total nonsense in fact. So, what is common? Often complex change request processes. That's what we figure out when we start delivering something, but the client says, no, that's not what I wanted, or from today on I have a different idea about that, deliver it tomorrow, things like that. Then you will have processes in place for that. Time and scope often expected to be fixed too. That's what I mentioned at the beginning. All 3 parameters, time, scope, budget, should be fixed. It's not going to work. But that's what in a contract is usually written down. And sometimes quality as a control mechanism. Because what gets lost when deadlines approach? What gets lost usually?
Quality is quality.
Testing, quality, exactly. Is this good?
No.
No, definitely not. Who wants to buy a car that's not going to drive because just the deadline arrives? No one, right?
Otherwise, dead arrives.
Yeah. And penalties. Forget about the penalties for now. So this is the triangle concept. Let's go to the other ones, the more interesting ones probably in an agile fashion, like provisions and accomplishments. This concept is about a lower guaranteed T&M rate. We still have time and material rates in there. But there's also the other aspect that you only get the full amount of money for your delivery if you're reaching some certain success criteria you need to agree upon, you need to negotiate with clients. This is this concept of provisions and accomplishments. It's a cost-driven fixed profit model. How does this sound? Complicated, right? Yeah. Cost-driven fixed profit. Profit is good usually. If you make profit, you earn money, you can buy things. That's good. Invoiced and T&M rates or other model. This was this. You have a lower T&M rate. That means, for example, if you charge per hour, and this is just a figure now, let's say 20 euros, the fixed T&M rate would be half of it probably. But that's something you can negotiate in this concept. And the rest of the other 50%, you get as a bonus if you reach certain success criteria for your deliverables. Unstarted features can be exchanged. This is traditional agile. I like this term. I heard it a couple of weeks ago from one of my clients. Traditional agile. Agile is already tradition. That's good to hear, actually, isn't it? Projects can be stopped by the client at any time. This is also something which is preached from the very first days of agile methods on. Whenever you reach a certain point in your project, you think all the features you need to earn money are there. Why going any further? Because it's written down in a contract? Yes, that's the usual reason. But does it make sense? Maybe it's unnecessary, because if you add features which do not create value, and in the previous session it was about value, if the additional features are not creating value, what's the point of in delivering them? What's the point of in writing this code? No, there's no point in doing that. It's just additional risk, in fact. And the remaining budget will be distributed amongst involved parties. This is the shared profit model, shared risk, shared profit model. So once upon you agree with your client that it's good enough, and all the features we want, this probably minimal viable product or minimal marketable feature set, MMF, if it's there and your client says, it's good enough, I love it, I like it, go to the market, let's go in business with it, then you can share the rest of the budget, if it's not overrun, of course. Yeah, sure.
So this model is any parameter fixed or all are varied?
We come to this point. I will have a matrix for that. All or nothing. Did I skip one actually? Yeah, I skipped one, right? No. So, all or nothing. Concept. Contracted paid on D&M rates per sprint. Still diamond material. Client can deny payments for up-defined maximum number of sprints. So that's the interesting part in this model now. So if there is something not met, a success criteria, the client can say, I'm not going to pay you. But only to a certain amount of, to a certain limit. So let's say if you agree in your contract, we can deny payment for, let's say, 5 sprints, and that's the absolute maximum. Then you need to figure out why it was the case that the client denied the payment. Because otherwise you run in the risk that your company will not see any money and is going on with the work and work and work and work for free. That's not good at all, of course. Unstarted features can be exchanged again, project can be stopped by the client anytime, and the remaining budget will be distributed. That's in common between those two different concepts. But the interesting part here is really the sprint. Denied payment per sprint. This puts a little pressure probably on the contractor side. Because of course, if you're not earning money, that's not a good situation. It doesn't feel good. But it forces you to find out why the client is not happy. Talking about client expectations again. This is something which we can find already in the Agile Manifesto, you know? Customer collaboration. That's exactly what we're talking about, things like that. And here's, yeah.
Can you please go back to that? Last. Client can deny payments for up to defined maximum, denial of payment, the next one. The next one.
This one.
Yeah. Denial of payment for maximum number of sprints. Isn't this risky for the vendor, contractor?
A little bit, but you need to figure out how many sprints you can survive without a payment. What is your absolute minimum, you know, or maximum, not minimum, maximum. Sure, it's a little bit of a risk. But on the other hand, in a customer collaboration situation, in a partnership, you want to deliver something which creates value for the client. This is the starting point. This is what we want to achieve. And if there's something really going not that well, whatever the reason for that is, then it's obvious that you can say, okay, D&M is usually, that's what I said in the beginning actually. If you are slower in a typically D&M based contract, time and material based contract, if you're slower, you earn more. That's prevented here. That's definitely a risk for the contractor side, but a fair risk, I would say.
Would you know of any companies that follow this billing model?
Yeah, similar ones, yes.
Okay, the last one seems very interesting. Like remaining budget at some stage to figure out if we achieve the amount of functionality that we need to. Like, this seems very profitable for contractor to basically get that.
Yeah, but also for the client probably, because if the main criteria for success on the client side is time to market, that means you're faster than the expected end date, delivery date. They can be sooner on the market than the competitor, for example. That means more earnings, more income for the client side. And why not sharing this? If it's a great success, share it.
This is very similar to the value-based billing that is doing, like even for milestone-based, whether I do it early and.
Sure, absolutely.
And for the second point, if he has instead of 4 stories, he's completed second 2 stories, like. So do you expect 50% of payment or?
Can you repeat the question, sorry?
So suppose he has, in the sprint, he has committed like 4 stories.
Yeah.
And he completes like only 2 stories, so do you expect 50% payment to be
If
made?
this was the success criteria, yes. But you have to define first what the success criteria is. Is it a number of stories, or is it value created, or whatever it is? This is what you need to negotiate. And it depends on the context, really, what this kind of definition means then.
How often does the payment happens in these kind of scenarios, the 2 scenarios that you talked about?
Here it is per sprint. I mean, that means how often you ship money, I don't know. But usually after every sprint, you know whether you will get a portion of the money or not.
Okay.
If you agree that, let's say, every 6 weeks you get really some kind of cash, that's negotiation.
Okay.
And here's the matrix. So, we have budget, time, scope, quality, and I added expectations. Because for me, in an agile world, to work with client expectations, it's mandatory. It's not an exciter, it's not performance. If you take the Kano model, it's mandatory. It's a basic need. We are all people. We have all expectations. Contractors, clients, everybody. Individuals, teams, etc. So, and if we want to have this in a contract, then let's see what it means for these various different models. A fixed price, for example, expectations are set, are written down. Like, we need to deliver the scope, the budget is fixed, potentially fixed time, potentially fixed scope, and the quality is a result of everything. Time and material based rate, fixed or flexible time, potentially fixed scope, result quality, and the expectation is once again written down as a contractual paragraph.
But
So,
quality is result and fixed here.
Sorry?
If you look at little more on the quality part of it, as like how quality is a result in the.
That's what I meant before. If you have, let's say, if the deadline is approaching, the date is approaching, what happens?
Quality get.
It begins to deteriorate. It begins to suck. That's why I said it's a result of it, actually. And the other way, in the other 3 models, and that's of course the ideal situation. I'm talking about the ideal situation here. Quality should always be fixed. There's no point in talking about quality. Whether something is a bug or not, yes, you can talk about that. But whether it's something of high quality or not, no. Or at least you need to define the amount or the level of quality you want to have. Maybe it's not about high quality, but about good enough. That's what you need to define. But when it is defined, it's fixed. No need to talk about that anymore. The budget, you see in the first line is fixed, and here on the third, on the all or nothing concept, it says capped or fixed or flexible. Capped means it's pretty much fixed. This is the maximum amount of what it can cost, but it can be lowered. Once again, might be a risk on contractor side, of course. Time, potentially fixed for provisions and accomplishments, flexible for money for nothing, change for free, and fixed or flexible for all or nothing. And the rest you can read yourself. You see, this is the criteria. These are the main differences between the various models. And you can already see from blue to red, from the triangle to the diamond, from traditional to agile, there are certain mind shifts in mindset, paradigm changes. You define success criteria differently. You define quality differently. It's more about partnership. It's more about working together. It's more about trusting each other. All the values you can find in literature about Agile, in the Agile Manifesto, in the Scrum Guide, wherever you search for them. And this is the reason why I like the red side actually more. Still, most of the world is working with the blue part of it. And I cannot tell you whether the world is ready for the red side. I know some companies who work with similar models or exactly these models, but not very many. So, strategies. how can you implement such a concept? How can you set up these contracts? What do you need to do? I have these 6 steps created. For provisions and accomplishments, you need to define the provisions. For money for nothing, you need to define the product backlog, which is hard to do because what have we learned about the product backlog? Exactly. So how we can achieve that? We need to figure out. That means planning a little bit upfront further than we want to actually. Could be a pro, could be a con, depends on the context again. All or nothing, definition of all and nothing, of course. And then the other 6 steps have the same headlines, like agreement on countable items, evaluation of velocity, definition of checkpoints, definition of exit criteria, and general agreements. So, step 1, provisions and accomplishments. This D&M rate, time and material rate, that's what we need to know about. That's what we need to negotiate with the client. Definition of a bonus based on velocity. Does this sound good?
No, we never bring the velocity.
Definition of obligations of client and contractors. Both sides in a partnership have some obligations. And that's what needs to be written down in a contract. In traditional contracts, it's not very often described because it goes back to how we want to achieve it. In my contracts for the last 7-8 years, I always write down the methodology, the method. Like we're using Scrum, we expect that somebody is available for questions, for reviews, etc., etc. It's written down in the contract just to make the other side a little bit more aware of what is expected and what are the obligations of the client in an agile partnership. Step 1, money for nothing. We need to define the ethics. We need to have this product backlog a little bit more defined as we want to, like I said. Definition of user story as far as meaningful, that's the agile way, of course. And high-level estimations of epics and user stories, like maybe in story points, maybe in some other units like t-shirt sizes. We used t-shirt sizes for estimation of epics. Okay, some of you are familiar with that. This is more like, I'm not calling it estimation anymore. I'm calling it categorization. Because it's not an estimation, actually. You want to do?
We got it bucketing. So.
Bucketing, yeah. Definition of dates for deliverables, definition of budget, agreement on collaboration between client and contractor. How can we work together? This is a very important aspect of this model. And compensation of analysis phase based on D&M. Because before here, we need to define the product backlog up front. That means we're not sprinting yet, probably. Okay? That means we have some work to do before we can go into business together. That means we need to have something compensated, like 3 weeks of defining user stories and epics. And the step 1 for the last, for all or nothing, is definition of all or nothing. This is a definition of the T&M rate per sprint and the maximum number of sprints without payment. It's not more than that in this concept. All models. Step 2, agreement on countable items. This could be functionality, features, cost of delays, was explained in the previous session. Bugs, absences. What does it mean, absences? Why do we need to define that? What do you think?
Something that should not be included.
Maybe? Sorry? Who said something?
Just essential features.
No. Talking about are people available or not. Sick leaves, vacations, etc., etc. Because if you agree on something per sprint, that means you should have a stable velocity and capacity. But that's not the case in reality. So you need to define what to do with absences.
You have an average velocity, right? Velocity could go up and down.
Exactly.
In case of an emergency, what do you do?
That would take care of the absence. The average velocity would take care
The
of
velocity would take care of that. Capacity is a different component and still plays into this concept.
Can you give an example of how these absences were handled in these contracts?
For example, if you know that you have, let's say, a very simple calculation, 8 people on a team, That means if 2 of them are on vacation, 25% less. That's how you can do the math behind that. Very simple. That would be the most simple approach.
So if 2 people are not there, then obviously I'll not meet that velocity for that sprint.
Maybe. Not said.
Okay, so in that case, my payments obviously would differ. Anyways, it's a TNM.
Yeah. Would be one way of defining it, yes.
But I think while planning, we do a kind of small buffering also to accommodate such kind of unplanned leaves, sick leaves.
Contingency, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, step 3, all models. Evaluation of velocity. In the first one, we have a duration of 3 to 5 sprints to figure out what could be the velocity. We still don't know whether it's rather stable, what the average is, and whether it will go up further or whatever. P&A, execution of sprints based on full DNM. Here, money for nothing, change for free, definition of velocity at the end of these sprints. And here in the third one as well. And we have another step 3 criteria, which is definition of success criteria for the bonus payments in the first one. That's what we need to know. Once we reach something, whatever the success criteria is, we want to get money for that, of course. Because we don't want to have the entire project only on the lower based D&M rate executed, okay? We want to have the additional money. But what are the success criteria? Very important for the contractor side, of course.
So, Chair, are the billings different when you write up the contract? Are they different for the first few sprints and later? Because the velocity could increase, and the supplier will continue to get a bonus. So, how do you deal with that?
If the velocity is the success criteria, yes. If it's not the success criteria, no.
If it's a success criteria, and supplier continues to say we are getting better and better, obviously because they understand the context better.
Absolutely. And that's the reason why you have to figure out what the velocity is for about 3 to 5 sprints. So the first phase of this project, the first 3 to 5 sprints probably are treated differently.
Okay.
Maybe. That's a matter of negotiation again. Step 4, definition of checkpoints. We had this term milestones already. In every project, whether it's traditional or agile, we have some certain milestones in there. We don't use this terminology so much anymore in the agile world, but still they are there, checkpoints. We have retrospectives, we have reviews, we can validate idle time. That means whether the client is responding or not, for example. Or you have to wait for a third party, or whatever this idle time causes. Validation of reporting schemes and defects. So, reporting. I don't want to talk about reporting here. I just mentioned it. But defect schemes. What are we going to do with bugs? What are we going to do with defects? We said quality should not be a result, it should be fixed. But still we can forget about something. Still we can misunderstand something, which creates a bug. Or we can work with new technology, which is completely unknown and we need to learn about it. Things like that. So we need to identify a way of handling this in a collaborative way with the client.
Just in the previous slide, so I understand all these checkpoints are applicable at the end of every sprint?
Or during. Or at the end of a release. Whatever the context is, it depends on the product and the situation, I would say. Definition of exit criteria. We said in one of the models that we want only a maximum number of sprints with denied payments. So, once we go beyond that and we cannot agree on something how we can go further, we need to have some kind of exit criteria. So, we need to find out the potential risk for the client and the definition of that. Also the potential risks for the contractor and the exit criteria for that. That's something that should be written down in the contract. This is where I would also include lawyers, of course. Because this is the stuff when legal stuff kicks in. When they can do their job and they will love to talk about these kind of things. I don't. So, definition of exit criteria. Definition of installments for the contractor on exit of the client. That means if you exit a project, what does it mean actually? We have this word penalties in there already. We also need to think about installments. We need to think about what does it mean, for example, sufficient or enough functionality. If you really want to stop the project before the agreed amount of scope, for example. If we say, okay, it's enough functionality, it's good enough. And also about the budget distribution. We said it's a shared profit model, also a shared risk model. So how can we distribute the remaining budget? What does the contractor get? What does the client get? And that's pretty much the same on the other side. The only C factor here, definition of exit criteria, quality sucks. Like I said, still we are in an agile world, but still quality can suck for whatever reason. And the contractor can say, okay, no, what you delivered, I don't like it, I don't want it, it's not working, I need to leave you. That's what you need to define here. And the next step, definition of general agreements. That's what you have in all the contracts, like duration of project, how to apply knowledge transfer, what about warranty, etc., etc. So, how does it sound so far? Does it make sense? Does everything look good?
The quality being fixed, it still doesn't add up for me, because you have good coders and you have bad coders.
Yeah.
That doesn't change it.
Actually, a good taste doesn't matter.
But in average, it should be a team criteria. So, if you have something that a person who still needs to learn, hopefully he can learn from somebody else on this team. Maybe. So, pros and cons, provisions and accomplishments. A pro is definitely motivation to keep pace. It's about transparency, of course. Collaboration is required, simpler with single teams, and can start without comprehensive requirements definition up front. And the cons are definitely, it's based on velocity. So to be compliant to something, to manipulate something, is very easy. And that's definitely a con of this model. It's complex with multiple teams, and scope creep is still possible in this context, in this model. Contractors stuck in just provisions payments. That was the risk we said before. If you only get the provisions payments and you lose money probably because your client is not going to pay the bonus. And it's volume based, which is also something you need to measure, and that means you can also create something that looks like it's compliant, but in fact it's not really good. This is this key performance indicator stuff, which sometimes leads in the completely wrong direction. So, money for nothing, change for free. We have value-based in addition on the pro side, which is very good because that's what we want to have in the agile world. We always say we go from plan-driven to value-driven. So if we have a contracting model, a billing model, which is value-based, isn't that great? That would be great. It runs well with multiple teams, which is also an advantage, and it should avoid exhausting discussions about change requests, because you can exchange for free if it's the same, let's say, complexity. Disagreements about complexity possible, sure. More comprehensive requirements. Elicitation required and requires estimation. And there again we are sometimes trapped in this estimation contract game, as it is called, for example, in large scale Scrum and Scrum. Do I need to do something? No. No. And an analysis phase is required. So that means some kind of pre-work before we can start implementing. And the last one, all or nothing. It's also value and quality based. It runs well with multiple teams, so it's also applicable in scaling environments. And it's simpler. And the cons, disagreements about quality again. idle time for contractor teams possible, and subjective values can influence progress and project. So that's what I said at the very beginning. We are working with people. They have expectations. And they have subjective quality, what quality is. It's not only objective measurable, it's also about their subjective side of it. Like, it's all good, it's all green, it's all delivered, I don't like it. Okay. So, and here's a summary. I don't want to go through that. It's again pros and cons. It's about what you heard before. Thank you. Questions?
Fades, scrubs. Sprints which fade.
Yeah.
How do we accommodate that? How do we dialogue that? Because that failure can happen anytime during the life.
What is a failure?
I set out for a goal,
Yeah.
sprint objective.
Yeah.
And for whatever reasons, change in business or change in team or a technical
Yeah.
mass that I have to do, I'm not able to achieve it.
In this context, if you have something like the model, to go back. Where is it? So, for example, if you have this model in place, then you still get money for that, but no bonus. That's it. As simple as that. But if you, like you said, fail, I mean, I don't like this word because whatever fails is really. If you fail more often, and you exceed this number of limit where the client can deny payments, or in the other model can deny payments, then you need to figure out whether it really makes sense to work together in this context, or something was agreed which is not really achievable. This is about the retrospective. Retrospectives are not only about sprints. Retrospectives can also be done in a larger context. Okay. Any other questions? Well, then.
Any link or web link or some other resource where we can learn more about?
Not really. Because like I said, I modified some, you can search for contracting, agile contracts and things like that, agile billing on the web. You will find some sources. I modified them. I think the slides will be shared. Yeah, so you can download them and go from there probably. Well, okay, then thank you for your attention. Created some ideas at least. Yep. Okay, thank you.
So guys, don't forget about the happy hours. Happy hours is from 5:30 to 6:30 at 19th floor. And you need to carry your badges, otherwise you are not allowed. Thank you.
you have to. Yeah, that's the only resolution. Sure.
You want that as well?
You wanted to eat.
You also want to come on and
I think that's amazing.
नहीं ये कैमरा ऑन होता है
That's a substantial challenge that we have out of the organization. We have boards, management, all of them to be story point is and of course there's a huge gap between there's no correlation between story points to estimates. Story points to hours and estimate, which is understandable. So how are you handling that for
Three story points is not exactly, let's say, 3 percentages. It's more a range from 1 to 5 problems. It's not exact.
So essentially
it's like in mathematical models, it's more like a scale curve, Gaussian scale curves. So that's what you can visualize. And so most likely 3 story points is in this range, but it can still go down. That's how I explain it. And for the calculation, because that's one thing that is interesting in summary. In average, it doesn't work. So average also and extrapolate that and do all the traditional math. That's how I refer to it.
So essentially you're saying just deal in story points. Don't get worried.
The team should deal with story points.
And all conversations should be on story points and hours. So just don't go the hours route at all. So
no, not for estimation, because unfortunately there are enough studies out there for the last 50 years now that people are not able to estimate. We are just bad. We cannot do it. Even the best person in the world cannot precisely estimate. We are impossible. That means that's the reason why we prefer growth. And in average, this is then a decision for the business sales persons probably what they want to sell. If we say it's between 3 and 5 months and it costs between just a figure between 100 and 100,000 something.
It's a range.
Yeah. Decide how much margin you want to have on top of it or what you want to sell.
We have some guidance in terms of debt contracts as well. I mean
there's
literal contracts.
There's
That's why you modify it.
That's why I said you can look it up on the just still on the landscape of agility, this contractual stuff and building stuff is really fresh. Yeah. That's the reason why I don't recommend anything at the moment, because it's all just
We'll read through. Thank you.
Really, if in case we don't have that kind of buying, so you really recommend this?
Excuse me. I just am waiting for this.
Yeah.
So the memory is out. Till the memory was there, I think. Thanks a lot for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was saying that if we don't have the buy-in from the customer, so
if you don't have the buy-in, you just can't.
Right.
You know.
And sometimes it's an experiment, and some of the clients probably start with a very tiny tool in which the failure process is not so critical. And then just figure out whether it makes sense or not. But if you don't have the
cable I have kept it inside.
Thank you.
Sure.
Possibly by the end of the day, the last session.
It was nice, isn't it?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do have a card here somewhere. I'm at the last of my cards today as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I just ran out. I'm just run. Oh, I'm sorry. You're on LinkedIn? Okay. How are you, Jeff?
Get somebody else to acknowledge that this time it is very fluent. When I say 3 and he says 3,
yeah, that's
they are different perspectives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so getting them to agree is miracle. But thankfully, this actually helps. Because a lot of organizations set rules, and they don't want legally to try and explore new things. It just allows me to have that upper limit, lower limit, and try and go and experiment and work with it. So I will surely trouble you because we'll have to fall back and as I get ping pong fixing move queries onto us. So hence I had to ask about a sprint which does not deliver value or create sprint, but how do we contract it? Because after a particular point in time, the customer will start seeing it is not delivered for the last 3 or the last 4 have not added anything. How do we go back?
Then there's a serious issue.
Yeah, that's a very tricky thing and it can get legal implied. So that's where I came from. Just a brief coverage would let me know. So I will show you a couple and hence I can't.
You're welcome. You can have still some.
That will be very nice.
I got email.
Otherwise
it's on the
yeah, we got the email. So
if you haven't, that will be very nice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for the
Thank you very much.
and session.
Fantastic.
We'll take a picture.
No, okay, yeah, let's do it.
Would you mind? No, we can take
Sure,
a picture
sure.
with you.
Absolutely.
Let's just do a selfie one.
No.
You want an actual?
Yeah, we can take